So while I found a profession in traveling and experiencing these things, um, it's important to know and to stave off regrets, um, and try new things and get into uncomfortable situations, because in the uncomfortable is where change happens. So, as I said, my professional career is pretty much wanderlust. I get to travel for my job. I didn't know that this job existed when I was in college. So, those students of you who are here, you can get paid by a school to set up study abroad programs or make partner institutions abroad. So, I've lived in China, France, Italy, Scotland, all different kinds of places. As you can see, I just went to Paris the December before COVID, and went on a little spree with my boo thing. But in being able to travel and go around the world, you learn a lot of different perspectives, and you're able to kind of create families with individuals that you might not have before. So the people featured here are all family that I've chosen, which as you get older, you might understand is a really important thing to have. And getting to know other cultures also helps immensely in understanding how the world works, and that we're just such a small component of it. And Born a Crime, Trevor also says, when you make the effort to speak someone else's language, even if it's just basic phrases here and there, you are saying to them, I understand that you have a culture and an identity that exists beyond me. I see you as a human being. Chinese is my second language. French is my third. I love learning languages, and this quote really sums up the need for us to venture outside of ourselves, whether that's going abroad or maybe spending a nice evening in Chinatown in Chicago, but seeing that there are other ways to live and other ways to exist in the world. So I went to South Africa for 10 days to audit a study abroad trip that was happening at my previous employer, which was Monmouth College. During that 10-day trip, we went to Johannesburg, Kruger National Park, and Cape Town. For those of you who might not be South Africa, they have a very long and traumatic transgenerational history known as apartheid, which was also discussed in the book. And it was the first time in all of my travels that I had been to Africa. And going to a place that is where your ancestors are from, where your roots are based is a very intimidating experience, because you feel as though you are a part of those people, but you're not a part of those people. So there's this identity crisis that we can go through in experiencing that new and different culture. But it's so important to take that first step, especially going to places maybe like South Africa and seeing the Apartheid Museum and the rich history of racism there, or going to Poland, Germany, and seeing the Holocaust. It's a deep and a heavy moment to know that so much pain and hurt has taken place in these areas. But they are resilient, and they have not forgotten, but moved in a direction that helps them find resolve and find purpose through the pain of their past. So these are just some photos. I really had I don't know how to say it, coming to Jesus moment when we were walking around Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela's home in Soweto, which is the ghettos outside of Johannesburg, South Africa. And while we were there, there was obviously a school of young children touring the house, kind of like we might go to, I don't know, Springfield or Washington, D.C. They were on a school trip to Nelson Mandela's home. And they were so excited to see an American and a group of Americans, not only that, Americans who looked like them. There's a certain privilege that we have that I don't think we fully understand. They had never like seen an iPhone before. They wanted to take their pictures and see what they look like in pictures. But they were also, I think their teacher told me they were between 7 and 9 years old, really going back into their history in a way that can bring up a lot of pain, but also prepare them to be amazing leaders in the future. When you make, sorry about that. So my whole trip was great. It was powerful. It was really strong. And then if we kind of fast forward a little bit from after that summer, there was a lot of pain and hurt that was happening when I returned home from the motherland with all of this information and knowledge and feelings of empowerment and resilience that were squashed. So on October 12th of 2019, Tatiana Jefferson was killed in her grandmother's home by the police for being there and opening the windows to air out a warm home. Bothon John was killed in his apartment by an off-duty officer who went into the wrong apartment and thought that he was burglarizing her. And as a writer and reader, Toni Morrison died in 2019 as well. So it was a fearful time to be a young Black person, a young Black woman in particular, and then losing those guiding lights like the Toni Morrisons of the world or the Cicely Tysons who we just lost. It can be a really hard experience and make you just want to go back to places and spaces that you might have been in the past, but we all have the opportunity to learn from them. I went to Philadelphia and was a writer in residence at a program, and a girl that was also with me in the program said, writing can be liberatory when narrators own their narrative. And I thought about how the Black South African people had reclaimed their narrative. I thought about it being the first time in my life while I was in South Africa, in Cape Town, that I was a member of the majority, because the majority of the inhabitants of Cape Town are mixed race individuals. And I thought about the narratives and the narrators whose stories would never be told. And what could we do to make sure that their story and their life and their death and their unnecessary contributions to our society weren't in vain. So I think, like a lot of people, initially I was at a loss. We often find ourselves in these liminal spaces, these spaces where we don't feel like we fit into one dichotomy or the other. So in appearance, how do others see me? How do I see myself? Can I be fat and healthy? Can I be Black and white? Can I be Samoan and Caribbean? Can I be everything that I am in all this nuance? Also having this imposter syndrome. So you have these stories that we need to tell, and we have these situations that create so much meaning in the world, but how do we feel as though we're in a place to tell those stories, to speak those truths, when we're constantly having to code switch or shuffle between audiences? So that's kind of where you talk to your boss one way and you talk to your friends another way. Those are code switching moments. And it also ties into what W.E.B. Du Bois called double consciousness. So Black people often have double consciousness where they act one way around people of color and they act another way around white discourse communities. Me being African-American, Caribbean diaspora member, my mom is American Samoan and Irish, I was switching all the time, too many switches. And then you kind of get lost in the shuffle. Then thinking about how to get this through to interpersonal relationships, these stories that I needed to tell, these things that I wanted to change in the world. And I think a lot of times we deal with my favorite new term that I just found, self-Karens, people who want to call and, you know, spew their guilt on you and, you know, be the person who just doesn't understand why the world is this way and it's this horrible. And that's a taxing thing to deal with. Then you have failures. Spoiler alert for your adult life, failures do not end. Failures will follow you wherever. And in my life and professional career, I've probably received 10,000 no's and I'm still waiting for a yes, but I would never stop waiting for that yes because I don't want to regret the opportunities. And then we think about, why does it matter? Why is this our charge? Why do we have to tell these stories? Why do we have to go to these places and do these things and educate our population that's kind of in so much disarray? And when we see that our historical past is still living in the present, and what moves change forward when you're the only one advocating and you don't have any support, or you get false promises, or people, you know, want to do slacktivism and just say Black Lives Matter on Facebook and put a filter on their photo. What does that do? And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the Black South Africans, mixed South Africans, and how they dealt with apartheid, how they were able to mobilize these large groups of people to incite real lasting change after hundreds of years of injustice. Trevor Noah tells us that a knowledgeable man is a free man, or at least a man who longs to be free. So I'm not a man, I'm a queen, but I think I can still use, you know, this search. So as an academic, you search, you research, you revise, you rewrite, and you repeat. So this is an actual photo of an English studies exam, comprehensive exam that I had to take in December. If any of you are thinking about continuing on in the academy, it is no joke. But you have to educate yourself and see all these different perspectives and ways that people are interpreting situations to figure out what it is that you think and feel and what it is that you can do about it. We have these models like South Africa, that's an imperfect, you know, approach to systemic institutionalized racism, discrimination, practices of oppression. But we can learn from that, and we can, you know, deploy some of the strategies that they did and integrate it and make it better fit into our world. But you can't do that alone. So in trying to think about how my embodied person moves through the world, how my ideology moves through the world, and I communicate that to others, you can't do that without some guiding lights, right? Nothing we write, nothing we read is brand new information. We're all in conversation with each other, and we're all building off of ideas that already exist or that need to be built off of. So just to share some of my guiding lights, obviously, a woman who refuses to conform in terms of her sexuality, in terms of her gender, in terms of her size, in terms of her mental health, in terms of her wellness practices. She is what I like to call defiant assemblage. So she is all the things that she's not supposed to be in a body that's not supposed to be. And so it was really great because she became more popular, more mainstream in 2019 actually as well, to have somebody to look at who might have some similar qualities, similar experiences to the ones that I was having. Then in the middle, we have Adrienne Maree Brown. She wrote Pleasure Activism and Emergent Strategies, which is kind of the crux of this presentation. And thinking about different ways than anger and withdrawal and re-traumatization to deal with situations and to advocate therein. And then the other female on the far left, I believe, or right of your screen, is Dr. Chelsea Jackson Roberts. She's a yoga instructor, and she has a seminar. She went to Spelman College that is for yoga, literature, and writing for young Black women in urban areas. She's also a Peloton instructor. So I have Peloton, and she is so in tune with the discourse communities of people who are trying to take their health and wellness seriously. And then at the very bottom is a fashion designer from the 1980s. His name is Patrick Kelly. He was the first Black fashion designer to ever receive designation from the European Houses of Fashion as a couture brand, being Boujee. Of course, I love him. If you look up any of his artwork or designs, he pretty much reclaims things like blackface, watermelons, the mammy characters in his couture designs. So he flipped a lot of racial stereotypes and used them as a way to empower and speak truth to power when it came to the world of fashion. He unfortunately died of AIDS in the 80s, and his house of couture was ended. But he is still someone that I've always looked up to, because there's not many people who know about him, and there's not a lot of information about him to those who do not seek it out. So with all of that reading, writing, researching, and traveling and reflecting and all of those things, I was able to find language. And language, even more than color, defines who we are as people. And I think Trevor Noah makes an extremely poignant statement with that quotation. So it's a process, and it's a daily process of being able to find my history, owning my nuance, accepting and repurposing my anger, silence, loudness, finding catharsis and loving critique. So I have to be okay and be proud of the fact that I am so many different things all bundled in one, and so many strong cultures all meshed together, and own the fact that I get angry and use that anger in positive, constructive ways, and use my silence strategically, and use my loudness without apologizing for being loud. Finding my power. I embody a code meshed existence. So the way that I'm talking in this presentation, while it's a little more, probably organized, is the way that I talk to everybody. I'm not going to change and play politics for a system that wasn't built for me to be successful in. Being resilient, being able to take a no and know that a no doesn't mean never. It just means no. It's a temporal thing. And understand the emergent nature of the mundane. And for those of us who like etymology, emergence is defined as a way that complex systems and power patterns arise out of relatively simple actions. So being present and mindful in the small situations that will lead to greater change, and that will lead to a happier existence. and finding my beauty, acknowledging the system was never made for me to succeed or participate in, and I'm reclaiming my time. Thank you, Auntie Maxine. I will never be a thin Caucasian woman, and that's okay. And I have to be okay with that. And sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder. But Western medicine was not developed with minorities, slaves, transatlantic commodities in mind. So think about, we have to think about the standards that are being presented to us and who is developing those standards. And if we want to continue to allow those standards to be the dominant ideals. Finding my people, finding those who build themselves while I build myself and support nothing short of excellence. So I don't need people so much to encourage me or give me accolades. I need people who are doing their work next to me while I do my work. I think getting to a point of empowerment and independence, yet interdependent, is a really important part of life for students, for your professional career, for all of the things. And then unapologetic self-acceptance. So loving yourself in this form, loving what this body or your body can do for you, loving the opportunities that you have, and never taking those things for granted. This is what I call an intellectual remix. So changing the way that we think about certain situations based on experiences that we have, to develop better and more comprehensive and, I would say, tailored ideals for ourselves. So I'm closing in towards the end, but people might think that critiquing iCountry or critiquing time in South Africa or any type of critique is negative, or that it means that you don't care. But the immortal James Baldwin tells us, I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. To force someone or push someone or something to be better and to critique the current system is not something that has to be done from a place of hate or disdain or any of those things. It can be done from a place of love and a desire to belong. Adrienne Maree Brown talks about advocacy as pleasure, where pleasure activism is the work we do to reclaim our whole, happy, and satisfied self from the impacts, delusions, and limitations of oppression and or supremacy. All of us at some point or another, regardless of our travels or experiences, have probably been impacted by oppression or some form of supremacy in our lives. In engaging in acts that are pleasurable to you, you are creating your own world of happiness and satisfaction. There's power in self-acceptance. Lizzo's quoted in an interview saying, I finally realized that owning up to your vulnerabilities is a form of strength. Understanding that your image of perfect, or what you think is perfect or perfect today versus perfect 5 years from now, is going to be different, and where you have opportunities to grow and where you have opportunities to discipline is really important, because we don't often like to see ourselves as not strength. Lizzo, as an artist, does not like to be called brave. Spoiler alert, part 2, Black women in general do not like to be called strong, because a strong Black woman means that we can't have weakness. And if we're going to accept those nuanced identities and the complexity in who people are, we can't be placed into archetypes. And then in Chelsea Jackson Roberts' yoga class, she often says, as part of the yoga, they don't even know what it took you to show up for yourself today. And her quote is, "It's essential for us to remember that we have to feed ourselves, whether that's through yoga, meditation, spending time with our family, taking walks, whatever it is that feeds us, we must make time for it." So especially when we're dealing with larger issues, or needing to tell the stories of those who can't speak for themselves, or needing to have our stories heard, we can forget about taking care of ourselves and our flesh and our body and our needs. Um, and you can't show up for anybody else until you show up for yourself. Um, so I really think that she's a champion of that. Trevor Noah's mother told him, "Do not fight the system, mock the system." There is extreme power in the ability to laugh, the ability to move forward and be resilient. And so you might be saying, "Tia, how can I do this? Why are you're supposed to be talking about your trip." As somebody who travels a lot, I don't have a lot to talk about my trip. I want to talk about how we can all do the things that we need to do to live our best lives. So how do we do that? I think the first challenge is to stop living in someone else's imagination. We think of this 1% that kind of governs everything that we do. That's an imagination. It's not a real life situation, right? Like, there's not a person or a body of people that is saying, men are stronger than women. Or maybe there probably are. But a lot of our social constraints are caused by imagined rules that govern the way that we act. So if we decide to reject that and live in our own imagination, you can think of the possibilities therein. Audre Lorde does a lot of work with anger and how to use anger to increase creativity and acknowledge the limits of guilt. So guilt doesn't do a whole lot. Guilt is a selfish kind of emotion that an individual can have, but anger can be used and channeled and concentrated to do amazing things. Obviously, as the international ed lady, I'm going to say, see the world. For those of you who are in here that are students, you are only young once. I don't travel nearly as much as I used to. I got bills, I got student loans, car payments, dogs, so many things that I have to deal with. So go, and don't regret not going and seeing something different from what you know. Know your role and what your contributions are. So when we're working towards change, or we're working towards story or meaning making or anything, we often think we have to do it all, but we all have different skill sets. And the small things that we do in our specialized skill set can help move things along. So change doesn't happen because of one huge cataclysmic event. I think the last time that happened is if you believe in the Big Bang, right? Like, that was just one happenstance. But it's small pieces that people bring and contribute and pile together to make change. And you can figure out what it is that helps you tell the story. If you're not a writer, that's totally cool. I would argue that you are, because we can all write great things, and we all write all the time. But maybe you're better at stats, or maybe you're better at visual composing, or maybe you're better at public speaking, or maybe you're better at coordinating, permits with a city office for a local protest. Every role matters in getting things moving and getting change across. And if you say you aren't a writer, find a modality or a method for you to express yourself and make it your own. So sometimes it's hard to find pleasurable things in life. I think certain circumstances over the last, 5-ish years have not made it easy to have constructive self-expression, but have your moment in the sun in whatever way that looks like. I love to dance. While I like to write, I love to dance. So I make sure I dance for a couple minutes a day to a good song, right? It's Black History Month right now. So this morning I did Motown Philly by Boyz II Men with my coffee. And you living your best life, as the next thing says, you living your best life is going to change people to be like, hey, why is that girl like so happy? And why does she care about so many things and she's so happy? She's not weighed down by the weight of all of these movements or issues or stories that she has to tell. You can, lure more people, you lure more flies with sugar than vinegar, whatever that saying is. And then my last quote is, freeing yourself was one thing, claiming ownership of that freed self is another. Trevor Noah says, love is a creative act. When you love someone, you create a world for them. So having taken my trip to South Africa, having not left the country for the longest time since I was 20 years old this year due to COVID-19, I've had to think a little bit about what my future holds and what world I can imagine for myself. And I would challenge all of you to do the same. And the things that you find pleasure in or that bring you pleasure are not normally things that you do alone. They're things that might require you to engage with another person. So Boyz II Men didn't know I was engaging with them this morning over a Keurig cup of coffee, but I needed them and I needed their art to be able to find pleasure in my moment. So for my future, I hope to go travel again. This is me in Ireland. I hope to be a great wife. That is me and my husband in France on that trip. Navigating the terrain of an interracial relationship in the 21st century is not an easy thing. But I want to be a better partner. I want to still rock the crap out of that Peloton, because moving is such an important thing. And then the middle picture was taken right before my 6th birthday. That's 5-year-old Tia with my grandfather on our family farm in Altoona, Iowa. While I grew up in California, my mother's family have always been farmers in the Midwest. My grandpa died 7 years ago, and my mother and myself and my sister inherited the farm. And I am very excited to be one of the first Black female farmers in Iowa. I always thought I'd want to go back to a bigger city or live abroad or all of those things, but I want to continue the legacy and to create my own imagination in my own spaces. And so I'm excited to start that journey. And then my other Bitmoji is I'm still working on that dissertation. So it's a long haul type dealio, but think about the things that you want in your future, and think about the enjoyable steps that are going to help you not live with regret and be able to tell those stories and live your best life. Because the more of us who are living our best life, the better our world's going to be as a collective unit. So that is all I have. I would be happy to answer questions. If there's any questions, you can follow me on Instagram. I do a lot of plant-based videos, and I am doing a video a day starting today of Black women that you should know during Black History Month. Or you can email me at tia.vanhester@icc.edu. I'm here to be who I needed when I was doing my academic pursuits. So if you want to find out how to do international education stuff, if you want to figure out what your passions are, I'm always here to listen, and I'm happy to do so. And I thank you very much for your time today, and happy Black History Month.
Thank you, Tia. That was wonderful. So inspiring and enlightening and motivating in many ways. So does anybody have any questions for Tia? You can unmute yourself if you want.
Hi, Tia. This is Margot. show my picture as well. I don't have a question, but I thank you for just giving us a really, I'm going to say, authentic presentation and letting us know about yourself and your travels and how your travels affected you as a person. I think sometimes we don't always get that. We get the travel log. I saw this, I went here, I did this, but how it impacts you as a person and how it moves you along your own personal journey as a human being. I enjoyed that. So thank you for sharing that with me. And I'll just say a brief hello to all my students that I see. A few of my students, I see some of those names there. So thank you for attending. Thank you, Tia.
Margot, I'll follow up with you and send you the complete list, what I have at least
Okay.
afterwards too. Okay.
All right.
So does anybody have any other questions for Tia or comments?
Actually, this is Susan Hillebold, and I'll just stop my video. But I was, are you thinking of maybe starting a African study abroad through ICC? Would that be a possibility, like through South Africa or Nigeria, or what other countries? Would that be a possibility for ICC?
I would totally love to. Like, that would be super great. But I also know our students' constraints and lives that they have going on. So Margot and I are actually co-chairs of a global learning advisory committee that's looking at potentially having virtual exchanges with schools around the world. And our first coil is going to hopefully be this fall. And it would be with a school in a class of students from Cameroon.
Oh, okay.
So our students and the students from Cameroon would work on a project together so that we can give our students a little taste test of study abroad, and then maybe from there develop more robust programs that would allow our students to go overseas.
Did you guys know about that February 5th virtual exchange conference through Oakton College, I think it is? No, I could send you the link. I had it because it's on let me just see here. Yeah, it's virtual exchange models, and it's a Zoom conference on February 5th. And it's through Catherine Schuster of Oakton Community College. She does something with global stuff, so, but they're talking about, instead of ISIP, instead of students traveling, they're thinking of maybe more virtual exchanges and how to set that up. What do the classes look like? How can you get students engaged? But it's Catherine Schuster at Oakton Community College. But I can send both you and Margot her email address. And it was a good, I really liked that presentation because it's empowering for not just women of color or people of color, but also for other people, just finding your voice and finding what makes you happy and living in the moment. So thank you very much.
This is Brandy Cassidy. I liked how you commented that the different things, how you found yourself. I think in today's society, whether it's with your religion or whether it's with being a wife or being an employee or being a sister, whatever it is, it's hard. And I know that when you talk about, I have Black friends at work and I act one way with them, but then when I interact with my white friends, I wouldn't say the same thing that I say to my Black friends, but it's okay because I can be different and I have all these different people that I hang around. And it's okay to be myself wherever I am. And I just like a lot of the quotes that you said, and I wrote down a lot of them, and just to try and make my best life. That's what I think this was a very good presentation for me. So.
And yeah, different groups. I guess I code mesh because I have my inside energy, but there's times that you can feed off of a room or feed off of other people's energy and maybe be more extroverted than you normally would be during or around, you know, church friends or at home and all of those different things. So just being conscious of that and knowing that all of the identities that we have change and their importance change and how we deal and handle them change all the time too, and being okay with that.
Well, if nobody has any other comments, I'm going to do a little bit of advertising here for the One Book, One College program. First of all, I did put in the chat, yes, there it is, the feedback form that I'd appreciate everybody fill out afterwards. Also to let everybody know, on February 24th at 2 p.m. via Zoom, there is a student-only book discussion on Born a Crime, and it's led by a gentleman by the name of DeMarcus Hamilton, who is an ICC graduate and is now a DJ at the local rap station here in town. It is a student-only event. If you've not read Born a Crime, register this week, and I am pasting the link in for the registration on that right now. And I will put more information there for that. If you register this week and need a copy of the book, we can send you a free copy, or you can pick up a free copy of Born a Crime. We are also, I think there'll be some publicity coming out here in the next few days or weeks. The One Book, One College committee is partnering with the writing contest that they hold every spring here on campus. And there will be a write your own memoir contest as part of the writing contest. And then we are looking for one more presentation, probably in mid-April. There's a student on campus by the name of Nathaniel Parks, who is a Native American, and he's got a presentation he gives called Abnormal Aboriginal. And that's going to be, we haven't set the date yet. No publicity has gone out for that one yet, but that one should be very interesting too. So if anybody has any other things, then let me put in the chat. Area 24, 2 p.m. student only discussion. DeMarcus Hamilton. Okay, if there is nothing else, then thank you all very much for attending, and I will send out these other two links in the chat via email to everybody who's attending. So thank you again. Thank you, Tia, so much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.